over to the glamorous Fiona Duncan-Steer to kick off the first one of the year. Over to you, Fiona.
Thanks, Matt. Good to see you and your face again. I had a month off over Christmas, and I've been back about 3 weeks now since then. So I'm really excited to be hosting the very first live and online RSViP event of 2021. Obviously, we're here again online. We're still to the dancing to the tune of old Boris, I'm afraid. So we're going to be doing this for the foreseeable until we can come back face to face. Obviously, with RSViP, our events are usually face to face, so we've got every good intention of coming back as soon as we can. But until then, we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing these every month. So if this is your first time on an RSViP online event, then welcome. Welcome to all the familiar faces as well. Thank you for joining us. Matt, I guess that there will be some latecomers, so I suppose if you want to just keep an eye on those and let them in as they come.
We might let them in.
People. Yeah, we might let them in.
Maybe.
We'll see how we feel. But yeah, we're gonna, as Matt says, we're gonna record the session. It's very much what we're going to do is, because we've got two amazing speakers, and we have amazing speakers every month, but this month I'm really excited about our speakers tonight. We've got Serena Simmons, criminal psychologist, who I'm really looking forward to chatting to, and then we've got the amazing Steve Judge, who is going to share his story with us. Steve is actually usually a keynote speaker, so he does his presentations very much as a I'll intro him and I'll hand over to him. So the format tonight will be slightly different in that we'll do a bit of an interactive chat with Serena first, and then we'll move on to Steve, and it will be a case of intro and hand over to Steve for around 40 minutes. 45 minutes per speaker, and there will be a chance to ask questions after each speaker as well. So hopefully that's okay still with you, Serena and Steve, in terms of them answering your burning questions tonight. You can use the live chat if you want to, but at the end as well, depending on time, we may unmute you all and give you the freedom to just shout out your questions. We're not. Can I just say
something a little bit about that, Fiona?
Yeah, go for it.
It's really good if we can manage that in the way that we've done it in the past, which is like, if you've got a question, it'd be great if you drop it on the chat, and then at key points, we might ask you or invite you to come on and ask the speakers the question personally, or we might just throw the question at the speaker. We'll try and get everybody's questions answered. Any question is valid, be curious, be interested. Probe, ask nice questions though, no difficult questions, not that they couldn't handle it, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Good stuff. Over to you, Fiona.
Thanks, Matt. So without further ado then, let's crack on, because we are at nearly 4:15. Time just fly with this. We're going to aim to finish by 6 if we can. So our first speaker then is Serena Simmons. So along with 25 plus years experience working in the field of psychology, Serena is also well known for her work in the area of forensic psychology, namely serial violent crime. Having worked previously for HM Prison Service and Rampton Hospital in a practice position, Serena brings in with her a deep understanding of what it takes to truly address behavioural change and peak performance in all aspects of life and business. So Serena, welcome.
Hello. Gosh, it's so embarrassing to hear the intro, isn't it? I don't know where to look.
It's weird, isn't it, hearing people talk about you in that way? Yeah.
Oh.
You've obviously got such a great CV portfolio experience, so can't wait to hear more about your story.
That's hard work.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of kickstart this really by asking, because this is something that a lot of people, and I know that you've said this on your website as well in your My Story section, that a lot of people say to you all the time, you've lost count of how many people say to you how fascinated they are by crime and serial killers and forensic crime and psychology in particular, which is what you specialise in. And I just wondered, is this something that you've always been interested in as well from an early age, and if so, how and why did you get into it?
Well, that's a really good question. Don't go start with an easy one, do you?
Sorry, just throw you right in there.
Yeah, it's right. I always say, if I had £1 for every time someone said that they were interested, either just in psychology or especially the forensic psychology. In fact, it would be lovely if people just put their hand up and said, I'd just love to see if people were interested in forensic or criminal psychology or like true crime. Yeah, okay. Some people maybe not, but yeah, so many people do love it. And like you said, I have been interested in it from a very early age. I think I was very early on more attracted to and curious by psychology in general, and that was because my mum was a mental health nurse, and so I could see the work she did, and she would bring stories home from her work. And then when I was very young, she started her own business, so she had her own home, group therapy home for people with mental health problems. And so from a very early age I was privy to that, so I was always super curious as to why those people behaved in that particular way. And I think the more you kind of go down that kind of rabbit hole, the more you're interested in extreme behaviour. So I became quite curious about why people did the particularly gory, gruesome things or awful things. Like, why were some people kind of hardwired or driven to do that stuff, and some people did really good things and positive things with their life? So yeah, I did pursue the criminal route quite early on, and was always fascinated by that.
Interesting. So it did happen from an early age, and obviously with parental, I guess, inspiration from your mum as well. But also in terms of, I guess my question from that then is, you've obviously got to be a people person to do what you do. Would you class yourself as a people person? Because you're obviously really interested in human behaviour.
Yeah.
And now you've moved forward into doing what you do in terms of psychology coaching. So how do the two marry up, would you say?
Yeah, it's funny. So when I say, so my academic work is all in forensic and criminal psychology and mental health. So it's very clear that that's what I do as a lecturer at university, and that was my background. So I worked for the prison service, as you said, and worked at Rampton Hospital with patients. But after a while, I don't know if this happens to everybody, and I do absolutely love that area of working and research, but after a while, I think certainly for me, I wanted to apply what I was learning to other people who were doing really good things. And I kind of had an itch that I needed to scratch. I wanted to apply the knowledge that I had and the things I was learning in that arena to other people and kind of give them tools to really enhance their life. So when you're working in a forensic setting, you're working with, certainly I was quite a damaged, a very ill population. So I specialised in people with personality disorders at Rampton. And, you know, they're very, very complex characters. I don't know if anyone here has a mental health background, but they're very complex people to work with. And so really there's nothing different. I know that there was, it sounds terrible to say there's nothing different between the two groups. Hopefully there is, and that most people outside of Rampton haven't committed a heinous crime. But essentially you're working with a human being, and we function the same. So it's that same spectrum of kind of motivation. And one of my old supervisors always used to say, and I steal this completely from him, he always used to say, I'm really interested in why some people turn out to be old Ma Hindley and others turn out to be old Ma Teresa. And I can totally relate to that. So it's the same kind of spectrum of human behaviour, just some are kind of down here functioning in this dark underworld and committing horrible crimes. But some people use, you know, what they have in terms of their motivation and skills and behaviours and what drives them to do something really, really positive in the world. And so that's the link really. And in all cases, I'm working with people because I love working with people. And I always say, forgive the phrase, but I totally get off on what I do. I just love it. So yeah, and it's people. Whether they've committed a crime or not, it's human beings.
And do you find yourself psychoanalyzing everyone you meet out of interest?
Well, again, I'm going to steal this from my supervisor. He said, only if you're interesting. Otherwise I don't bother. No, I don't really. I don't. I say that. I think it's difficult when you're talking to someone and you can see, especially when they know you're a psychologist, you tend to be told a lot more stuff. So people tend to, once they hear that's what you do, often start to say things. And so sometimes I'm forced to start giving advice or kind of saying what I think, but typically no, not unless there's something really juicy going on, no.
So do you find yourself having to kind of almost muffle yourself sometimes and not almost give somebody a rundown of an analysis almost of their personality, even if it's a friend? Do you find yourself having to stop yourself? Is it quite tempting?
I have, you know, that's a really good question, because up until, if you'd asked me that question about 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said no, because I don't do that. But as I've gotten older, I think you see people's story. I hear people's story. I hear where they're at, and you know, you hear what people are going through. And maybe if someone, for example, has a really bad reaction to something, if a friend has a bad reaction, I can kind of see why maybe they've done it, as we all do to some degree. But maybe if I'm privy to a bit more of their story, I tend to have that psychology hat on. And actually, it's really useful for me sometimes to compartmentalize and actually, just to be really blunt, if I deal with really pesky people, if someone's a complete arsehole, I might actually be able to say in my head, oh, can you swear on here, by the way, because you're recording this.
You just did. Serena, you just did. Hey, I've got a question. So I got a question. Do you ever self-analyze yourself? Like, do you ever go, oh, I've just done that because of this thing that, you know, happened to me, or, you know, whatever?
Oh my God. Yes, and yes. I analyze everything. You know, over lockdown, there's been so many things that have triggered me, and I've been doing some really deep work on myself, actually, just to figure out some of those triggers. And you can always peel back the layers, and just learn more about yourself, you know, why we respond the way we do to certain things. The work is never done. We're never perfect. And if I meet someone who thinks they're perfect, I have alarm bells going off in my head, quite frankly, because we're all a work in progress. There's, you know, lifelong learner right here. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't best to know everything about myself or anyone else.
So Serena, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer this, but like, because it's a personal question, so feel free to just say I'd rather not. But if it, you know, like, do you have a partner, and do you, like, how does that play into your relationship? Because like, my wife is always analyzing me. She's not, you know, and it drives me crazy. And I love her, but like, it does drive me crazy. So I'm just like I'm just thinking about you, like the level that you would go to on an analysis basis would be off the charts. So like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, it can be tricky in a relationship. So I do this with my partner. I try and do it with love and compassion. And I notice if I'm doing it, you know, I'm human at the end of the day. If I can see someone, especially you do with a partner, because you know everything about them, don't you? So I know their story, and I know that person's faults and the things that they struggle with. So it would be really easy for me to go in for a bit of a jugular. But I'm very careful to not do that. And I think if I feel the temptation, because I'm human like everyone else, I usually just have to step away and only step back when I can deliver that with love. And it actually, you know, I want it to land in a way that is actually nurturing to our relationship and not as a form of attack. But it's not that the ability wouldn't be there, because you know so much about your partner, don't you?
So watch out, people, watch out, because she's coming for you if you step on the wrong side of her. I'm just saying.
It's funny because, you know, obviously at Rampton, so you're working again with personality disordered people who are, a lot of them, extremely dangerous, and part of what you're trained to do is to have that dialogue, to know so much about somebody that you can trip them up and that you can kind of get a truth. So yeah, it's a useful skill.
I think on the same question, just following on from what Matt asked you, Serena, do you think that what you know in psychology and the tools and techniques that you've learned along the way with this, do you think it helps you, I suppose, based on what you said before about if you get somebody that isn't very nice, or you encounter a situation that's negative, or somebody that treats you badly, you know, where normally you would lose your temper, do you find that it helps, the tools and techniques that you know and the psychology behind it, do you find it helps you understand more and therefore become more empathic and more understanding? Yeah. Does it help you to be more a patient person, basically?
Yeah, and actually I think this is the work. If I'm just being really personal, I do tell you about some personal stuff from kind of what's happened this year. I think there were some triggers that I had, and exactly what you've said is the way I respond. So usually if I'm triggered by something, or something happens to me and I'm made to feel angry or upset, usually the kind of person I am is I go inward. So some people, when they feel that trigger, they go out, don't they? So they push that feeling that they can't process, it goes outwards. So it goes on to the other person, they attack. And that's usually, I think, because there's something that's triggered them, because they've not dealt with something. They have no insight into why they've actually had that response. Whereas I'm always, and I always say this to people, it's time to get super curious when you have that response. That's a gift. If you feel that quick emotional trigger, there's something there for you. So I tend to go in. So I was massively triggered this year, for example. Just one example, I've got many. You will not have enough time tonight for me to tell you how many times over lockdown I've been triggered. But one was from a neighbour, actually. who just didn't listen to me when I was communicating something that had annoyed me. And I got so upset. I mean, I was really crying and really upset. But what I did was I went in and I was like, what is it about this that is making me feel so upset? And I just really got to grips with the fact that it was a trigger for me to not feel heard. And that goes right back to when I was a kid, you know, when I didn't feel heard by, guess who?
Yeah, parents.
Yeah. It's always mum and dad have a lot to answer for, you know. And just with the proviso, actually, the disclaimer that I believe all parents are doing the best they can, so it's with no judgment to anyone's parents, and my own included. I love them dearly, but just how you're set up in your childhood, it really just, you know, it can show a lot of insight into why you're having the responses that you're having in your current life. And so for me, I went right back to that and did a lot of work on that on myself.
And I would assume, actually, that's really interesting, that I would assume that a lot of your clients that you've worked with over the years, I don't know what the percentage is, and you may know this, I'm not putting you on the spot, you don't have to know the stats and everything off the top of your head, but I assume that the stats are pretty high when it comes to why people end up the way they are in adulthood related to their childhood.
For sure. I mean, yeah, if you want to figure out why you do what you do, why you think the way you think, why you behave the way you do, you can trace patterns back, nearly at all times to your childhood and your upbringing, for sure. It has a lot to answer for. And usually what we do is, so we repeat patterns. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term schema, but we build these schemas or these patterns of behavior that we follow that do come from that kind of childhood conditioning. And there's real power in unlocking what those patterns are for you, so that you can actually change the story, change the narrative. And that's really, really powerful. And so, yeah, with my clients, although I don't do any therapeutic work anymore, I only do coaching, so positive psychology coaching. I always still, what I do is I take a glance back, focus forward approach. So I will always go back on someone's life and we'll uncover those patterns so that we can kind of push forward and make the changes in their life. So the focus is very forward thinking, but the power comes from looking at the past. So
Serena, can I ask you a quick question? Just to pick apart what you just said, I'm just super interested. So, you mentioned, like, in childhood, these patterns are sort of, written, if you like, in our minds. When we say childhood, what's the research in terms of that? Because I imagine it's like a bell curve, right? Is it? So, like, you start off with, like, not being able to write much in your schema. I'm not in psychology, so yeah. I'm just making this up, so you correct me. Right. So does it kind of start like with like nothing, but then obviously it's like a massive jump up. I don't know what kind of age that would be, and then does it sort of peter off, and then we're kind of in the groove and we are who we are? What sort of age? I guess the question is what kind of age range are we talking about that has? Because I'm a parent, so I'm just interested for my kids.
Yeah. That's a good question. And there's lots of research on this. We could never say definitively what's going on, because you can't do that. We're human beings, we're all different, and it's very individual. But typically, in psychology, so in developmental psychology, you would use the phrase tabula rasa, and you would say that all children come as a tabula rasa, which is a blank slate, which again in itself could be debated because there's so much to do with genetics and things that are hereditary. And if you have a spiritual outlook on life, which again, we probably don't have time to go into that today, there's an idea that you do bring some kind of spiritual past with you into that little being. And I think depending on your take on life, if you see a small child, if a parent has 2 or 3 children, I've yet to find a parent who doesn't tell me that they just appear different straight at birth. They just are different little beings, aren't they?
I'd agree with that. My oldest son is a nightmare, right? And I thought he'd be like, have a blank mind, and I'd just fill it with good stuff and he'd turn out great. No chance.
Yeah, exactly. And so I kind of fight against that very traditional view in psychology. So I do believe we come with some kind of sense of spirit that kind of is the essence of who we are, and we kind of carry that into the world. That's kind of almost our gift. That's who we're going to be. And that isn't traditional in psychology, I have to say. But really our main memories and our main patterns are formulated kind of up until the age of around 7 or 8. And then a lot of those are cemented, and you'll see a lot of kind of patterns reoccurring then between about 7 and 13. But those main patterns that conditioning is really set, and again, it's very broad and it's very individual, but mostly by about age 7. So what's a really fascinating thing to do with yourself, so you can do this for you, is to do a bit of a psychological timeline in your head. So if you literally kind of sit with where you're at now currently in your life, so just do it for you and kind of track back in your mind, go through your life kind of backwards, and just keep stopping where you feel something really pivotal happened and write it down and keep going back. And what you'll notice is a lot of kind of who you are and what informed your way of being, thinking, feeling, that a lot of those cluster around that age of kind of 7 and 8. So you could try it for yourself and just see what's going on there, and that might help you identify actually some of your own patterns. Why? So for example, if you stop on an event, why did you stop there? What's significant about that? Why has that come up for you?
That's really
How
interesting.
was that showing up in your life today, that little event? Why did you stop there? There's something that made you stop on that age. What is it? What did you decide at that age about who you are?
Gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in I mean, I could ask, I've got so many questions and so little time. So I want to move on just slightly towards, because I know that other people are going to be wanting to ask some burning questions about the violent crime side of things. I know I certainly do. So, I mean, I guess case studies, and I don't know how much you can tell us and whether you're allowed to name names. I'm hoping you might be able to, but I know that you've worked with quite a lot of high profile killers and serial killers, and this is something that you've obviously been doing quite a lot on in lockdown, haven't you? On Halloween, I'll tell everybody, Halloween last year, October 31st, Serena hosted a serial killer webinar. It was your very first one, wasn't it, I believe?
Yeah.
Tell everybody what the title of that webinar was.
I don't remember, Fiona. What was it?
Well, I think it was something to do with along the lines of, in fact, I've got it written down. Hang on.
Have you? Oh, good. I'm glad you have. What was it?
Oh, have I? No, I might not have actually. Oh, yes. Understanding the psychology behind the act.
Right, yeah. So that's serial murder. So that's what I specialise in my academic world. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I know you've been doing a lot of, you then launched your lockdown project, the Cozy Crime Club, didn't you? Which covers a lot of different topics around this. So tell us a bit about the Cozy Crime Club and the topics that you really cover and talk about.
Yeah, so it's funny because it's not what I do for my business at all. But the reason I did it was because I get asked about it all the time. So it's not what I do. My business has nothing to do with forensic psychology. It's all positive psychology. But inevitably, as I said at the start, when people hear that my background is in forensic psychology, they always want to know more. And I just thought, do you know what? Everyone's bloody locked down. They can't do anything. It's Halloween. Why don't I just once and for all put on a little talk that was so well attended? I couldn't believe the amount of people that came from all over the world. And so, it was phenomenal, really. And just so many really amazing people, kind of forensic pathologists, psychologists, amazing kind of group of people. And a large portion of those went on to kind of join this club. And what I did was I just basically did 4 talks, really for educational entertainment. And they were on, so we looked at child murderers, we looked at women who kill, we looked at I can't even remember.
I think you did one on body disposal, didn't you?
Oh, I did one on body disposal, thank you. So that was specifically why people choose a disposal site for that particular person, what they do with the body, dare I say. And then we did another one on detection and profiling. So what profiling is, how it works, what it can do for a case, that kind of thing. So yes, I did that, and it was, again, really well received. And what was nice about it was I do try and make it entertaining, but with respect to the topic as well, because it can be done in quite a tacky, gory way, and it really annoys me when I see that. And that's partly, again, why I did it too, because there's academic research that really is, so important in this field, and I wanted people to know about that as well. So
yeah, I think the thing about it is that people, I mean, a lot of this stuff is gory and people like the detail and the graphic side of it, but also it's about profiling, isn't it? For me personally, I I like things that profile people so that you can really get under the skin and understand, like you said at the beginning, why people do what they do. And I'm all about the why in everything that I do anyway. And you know, we should be in our business in general, if we're relating this back to business and back to marketing and all that, it's all about remembering your why and why we do what we do. But with what you do and with profiling serial killers, you're understanding why they do what they do, and I just find it absolutely fascinating. So if I can find a link between business and what you do in that sense of forensics, then I think that would be the link that I would certainly find. But in terms of case studies, you've worked at Rampton Hospital and in various prisons. Are you allowed to tell us anyone that you have worked with, or any memorable experiences that you'd like to share with us along those lines?
So I wouldn't be allowed to share names, because that's something that we're really not allowed, even when you've worked there. So it's been so many years since it was 15 years since I worked at Rampton, because I've been a lecturer now for so long, although I did go in for many years after because of research. But you're not allowed to talk about anyone that's there, but all you need to do is Google and you can see who's been there or who's still there. Memorable, I mean, everything was memorable to me. I think the experience as a whole was a memorable experience, because it's a part of life that you don't really have access to normally. Although, having said that, I think the thing to bear in mind, certainly with personality disordered offenders, and the thing that I always remarked on with my colleagues, is when you walk onto a ward where there are personality disordered offenders, it's very hard to know who's the patient and who's the staff member, because they, for all intents and purposes, you know, people don't look like a killer, they don't look like a rapist. So essentially they look like normal people, and certainly many of them are really, really high functioning. So if I were to, there were some really fascinating patients I worked with like a narcissistic and a psychopathy. So narcissistic personality disorder and a diagnosis of psychopathy. Really fascinating people to work with, because they're very high functioning, very, very chatty, very, very charming, especially to a psychologist, because you're a bit of a gatekeeper to what happens to them next. And so I think I really take that from the experience, really. Not that everyone is potentially a serial killer, because that sounds like I'm saying that everyone looks really normal. But yeah, and just what you're saying about the link, there is a huge link. Like I said, that's what prompted me to start my business, because having such a deep understanding of people, and my job was to help them change. My job was to actually rehabilitate them, because in the UK, we work on a rehabilitation model. We don't, engage in, thankfully, corporal punishment or anything like that. So my job was to rehabilitate. So everything is change-based work. And so it has a massive impact outside of that place. We put so much effort into someone who's done something bad, but the same kind of work is not available to people on the street or people in business. And so it's been really amazing for me to take what I know about human beings and how we work and apply it outside of that setting, because the work that I do outside of that arena is really all about how we peak perform, how we get the most out of ourselves. And that has a huge impact for entrepreneurs, because you essentially are your business a lot of the time. So if you know how you work, I often say it's like you're this amazing car. So I'm not into cars, by the way, but it's like knowing that you're like a Maserati or something, but you're functioning like you're just a little Skoda. But if I tell you how you can really work and what you're really capable of, you'll stop just driving to the supermarket and you might take yourself out on the open road and do something with it, because we are capable of so much that we don't kind of do. We just become very passive.
That's such a great analogy. I had a few questions around this. So let's talk about entrepreneurship and and that side of things. In relation to that, you talk about like a Skoda versus was it a Ferrari? I think
Maserati.
Right,
yeah.
Maserati. Right, fine.
That's a really good car, is
well,
it?
I don't know. I just went Ferrari, so I just skipped all the in between stages. But no. But question, like for example, like how do you like the biggest problem that I see, particularly in myself, if I'm honest, is the ability to burn out. In other words, the ability to just absolutely like go at 1,000,000 miles an hour and then eventually be just like, I can't cope anymore. And then everyone just says, Matt, it's your own fault, mate. you've just been doing too much or whatever. Like, how do you, is that the sort of thing that you come across and you help people with? And if so, how? Or is there there's probably loads of other things as well, but I just thought we'd selfishly pick on one that I have to deal with regularly.
It's funny because a lot of people in that situation, how people might present if they come to me, they often say, oh, I'm really lacking balance. I can't find the balance. I feel really unhappy. I don't know, don't know where to put my energy, or I'm spending too much energy in this place. It's very individual just to slow it. So I always say the first thing to do is just slow it right down. There's a reason that you're doing what you're doing. There's a reason that you're going that fast. So if I said to you, what's the reason? What instantly comes to mind for you? Why do you think you do it? For a start, yeah. Oh
wow, look at this, guys, like open coaching into Matt Davies' brain. So why do I don't know, I just so I have never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I just feel like I have like that kind of brain. Like I find a lot of other stuff pretty boring, so I just I like to take on stuff. I like to have variety. And I guess if you ask me, okay, so the truth is, like, I think it is back from my childhood, because I left home early and I had to prove stuff to my dad. Like I felt I had to prove stuff to my dad. So if we're going to get super deep, right, that's the truth. And so I think that's built into the groove that I have in my mind as to why I want to do well at work, for example. And so that's a strength, right, for me, but it also can be a weakness. So I think I'm driven from something inside of me, but then I don't have the mechanism sometimes to go, well, enough's enough. So that's kind of, I don't know.
So when you say you don't have the mechanism, what does that look like for you? So if you don't slow it down, do you burn out, and what does that look like?
Oh wow, here we go. So so for me, if I recognize that I need to slow down, but often I've taken on stuff. So often I've said yes, like I'm a proper like pleaser of people. So I'm like yeah, and then like to my wife, I'm like, I can't believe I've just done that. Like I'm just totally like I've taken on way too much, and then I feel overwhelmed, and then I'm like trying to run through all this stuff. So I have to almost like pull myself out of that, analyze stuff, and then start saying, well, I don't need to do that. I'm just gonna have to let some people down. So there's probably something in there about wanting to please people is probably another
one tiny last question, I promise.
Make it nice. Help me.
What does overwhelm, because you said overwhelm 3 times, what does that look like for you? So when you're in overwhelm, what do you do when you're overwhelmed?
So difficult to switch off, constantly thinking about all the billions of things that are on. Could affect my my patience levels, my frustration levels. Probably occasionally lose the plot, with my kids or something, which is not healthy, and I know that's not a good thing. I guess if I have had situations where it's got really bad, and I have in the past. This is not any recent history, but I have suffered panic attacks and stuff like that. So if we're getting really into it, that's where it can lead to. But I've kind of been able to pull myself back from that. But yeah, there's just a thought.
So you can see what I do.
No. Basically destroyed me. I'm gonna.
No, and it's funny that you say that. No, please, I hope you don't feel like that. Really.
No. It's all good. It's all good.
That was just 3 questions, but really, the first thing is about slowing it right down. And often when people come to me for that first session, they are very much like you were just now. So some people want everything fixed in one session. They go, I'm overwhelmed, and I come to you. You're a psychologist. Fix me, and I can go. But actually, usually the first session or 2 it's like taking a lid off something, and people just need to get their shit out. They need their story. They need to tell me their story. I want them to tell me their version of the story in its current form. The thing that I always check, which again is not typical with other psychologists, like I instantly want to know about your eating, your sleeping patterns. Are you exercising? So I want to know kind of holistically how you're taking care of yourself, because any work I do that is brain work, I can't do it on a foundation that's crap. I need you to have your foundation super solid. So with all my clients, I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a PT, but I will refer people on if I can see within a brief diary. Like I get them to keep a diary for a couple of weeks before I see them, so I can identify things that may be lacking. So I want that person to walk away feeling good from the inside out, not just mindset is a plaster. I'm not keen on the word mindset, although I do use it a lot because a language that people understand. But mindset to me is a plaster for something. I don't want to set your mind to anything. I want you to holistically change. So I want you to kind of really make a big radical long-term shift.
Yeah.
So I will then take you right back. So instantly you've thrown some things at me and gone, my dad, overwhelmed. I need you to break that down. And things like you saying people pleaser or lose the plot, that's not good enough. We need to know what you mean by that, because consciousness is power. If you can bring your consciousness to what you're truly doing, then that's powerful, because we can start to break down all those things and start to make little tweaks and changes. But it does start with that good foundation. And it's what you said before, Fiona, we need to know your why. And that is vital. So what do you really want to do? You, not your dad, not your wife, not your kids. Who are you and what do you want to achieve? How can you show up as your best self in this world? How can you go to your grave having feel like you haven't compromised your soul's desire? That's what we want. But when you're your best self, other people will just benefit 1,000-fold, even your dad. So a lot of the work I do is helping people retrain people around them to respond to the new them. Because when you change, people don't like it. So the
When you're free, I want to book a session.
you can do that.
I'm not sure if I do. I'm a bit nervous now. I've told everybody on RSViP all my inner secrets, but
Honestly, I think that was a bit well done for doing that and being.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm sure
that's all good.
And I'm sure so many people relate to what you've said. And that's the thing. And the other thing I just want to say there, because I'm so passionate about this, is really encourage people to not wait until they feel broken. You know, and anyone who's in a health industry or related industry, whether it's body, like Ali, I know that you work with people's bodies, for example, people often wait until something's wrong, like they're really overweight, or they've had an injury, or they're not feeling good in themselves, and they'll often come when they're in that bad place. But I think the best time to do the work is when you feel that you're in a good place, because then you have the resilience and the enthusiasm to work on stuff. Then you can gather the tools you need and take it into your future. And
so
this
it's prevention rather than cure, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's a shame that people don't view this work, that they view it as a luxury. And I don't think it is a luxury. I think it's something that we should all be doing. We should all be focusing on ourselves.
Because a big thread of everything that we've spoken about for the last 40 minutes with you, Serena, I feel, is self-awareness. Do you think that is one of the most important things, would you say? Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I do. So self-awareness, yes, to be aware of yourself, who you are and how you show up in the world. Is very much at the core of what I do, for sure. And just that means that you will live your best, kind of most, fullest experience of this life. And I think that that's just so important. That's why we're here.
Yeah,
awesome.
And do you think that people find it difficult to look within sorry, Matt, do you one last question, and then I think we should probably go to some questions, Matt, and I'll hand over to you. Do you think people find it difficult to look within themselves? Because I guess if they're going to come and see you, Serena, what you really do is you're a no-nonsense psychologist which knows her stuff, extremely likable and personable and approachable, and that's why I think that you've got the great balance of doing it in the coaching world, and that's why you're so successful at doing it in the way that you do it. But do you find that often you come across with your clients that they find it difficult to look within themselves, because that's ultimately what you're asking them to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a couple of things just to answer that. Yes, I think to do this work, you're very brave, because not everyone will want to go in. Most people spend their lives living kind of with blinkers on, and it's more convenient to do that. Or they spend, I'm sure everyone on here now will know at least one person in their life that responds to the world by blaming everything and everyone else. That's someone who doesn't want to go inside to look for any answers. So they are not my people. They are not the people someone has to want to do this work for me to help them. So it requires you to go within and to be brave and do that. And yeah, I do like to take quite a blunt approach sometimes. I'm very loving and caring.
I felt loved and cared for, by the way.
But sometimes we all need a kick up the backside, and I'm happy to do that if it's needed. I also like to laugh a lot. So if someone doesn't like to laugh, they're not my people, I have to say. I like humour. Humour is very, very important to me. But yeah, ultimately to do this work is you have to go within. And just really interestingly, one last little thing, I find I attract a lot of very high functioning females that want to work with me. And what's really interesting about them is they really want the work. They really want the work. But for the first 4 or 5 sessions, we're in a little tussle, because what they actually keep telling me is, I do that already, and that's fine for me. I already do that. Oh no, I already know that. And actually it ends up me just kind of saying, well, why are you here? You know, so the tussle with those particular women, I find, we all always have to kind of go over a little hump, because it's very, they want the help.
It's a breakthrough.
Yeah, exactly. So they clearly want the help. They really want the help, but first of all, they need to show me that they've got it all sorted. Now that comes from their relationship with their mum, but we won't go into that today.
Interesting.
Yeah, often they've learned to be very, very independent because of the relationship, a conflict with their mum in some way is usually what I find. Yeah,
I can relate to that, but we won't do a coaching session on it.
Oh, come on, let's do it. No, I'm kidding. It's, you know, there's nothing like having a live coaching session in front of loads of people where basically, you know, you're sharing.
Really
no, it's all good. We've got a couple of questions. Do you mind if I come to them? Because I'm just
please do. I'm sorry, I think I've chatted for too long.
No, not at all, not at all. Okay, so first questions from our good friend Ali West, and I think this is touching on, you know, the spiritual aspect that you mentioned. He says, do you think alternative psychological therapy and experimental techniques will become more common and mainstream in the future?
But do you know what? So is this a confidential chat with these 28 people
and the rest of the internet when it goes live?
The internet. I actually, no, one of the things I want to do in 2021 is own this a little bit more, because this is very frowned upon in my world, especially in academia. I have a very spiritual view of life. It's not spoken about in my arena enough. And I think you have to scrape the surface to find those people that have that kind of spiritual bent, but they don't like to talk about it, because let's face it, psychologists can be pompous asses a lot of the time, and they hide behind a title and think they're very, very clever and there's something very special about them. And I think that my simple answer is yes, Ali, I hope so. I think it's needed. I think without looking at alternative therapies and experiential techniques, we are not honouring human beings, and that's what we do. We're trying to help people be their best selves. Psychology was built, sadly, on more of a pathological model, so we're looking at illness and disorder, but psychology isn't just about disorder, and that's why I'm very passionate about positive psychology, because psychology is about understanding ourselves better, and not everyone is suffering with an illness or disorder other than the general human condition. So yes, to honour people and human beings, we need to be more open to those things, and I certainly am anyway. So I try and integrate this into my work anyway and honour the human being, and yeah, I really hope so. I think it's really important.
I really respect that, actually, just as a comment on that, Serena, that you are very sort of, you're not along the mainstream of what you might class as a typical psychologist. You've taken your own kind of direction on this, and you're quite open to be who you want to be and do it in the way that you want to do it. And if that means being the real you and not trying to be someone that you're not to fit into that box, as you quite rightly said with the psychology, I think I really respect that about you. And that's why I mentioned earlier about you being very approachable and personable, because I think that spiritual openness about you shows, and that's what gives you those attributes and makes you a really good coach in this area, because you've got to have those attributes to be a coach and for people to feel comfortable around you, I guess, haven't you?
Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, thanks. I'm trying to do it more. It hasn't come naturally. It's very natural for me as a person, but it's not something I naturally show in a professional capacity because I've been trained to not do it.
Yeah.
But again, as you get older, you kind of care less about what people think, if I'm honest. So I'm just like, life is so short. I just need to embrace, this is who I am. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right, another question quickly. I'm going to throw this one at you. Claudia, on Bordeaux's iPad. So there we go. She says, I think it's, yeah, she says, Serena, how many traits found, and this is a good one, right? How many traits found in serial killers are traits found in the corporate environment?
Very good question. There's a great book I'm going to recommend called Psychopaths in Suits. And that one is just one I recommend that answers that question. But Claudia, to answer your question, arguably very many. So if you're thinking about just traits of psychopathy, so to be glib, charming, superficial, high functioning, we could be describing many people in political kind of arenas for a start. So there's a lot of research, interesting research around this high functioning psychopathy, and things like narcissistic traits, all kinds of, certainly personality disorder traits are often found in corporate settings. And some people, so yeah, just very quickly, with those kind of personality disordered traits, we're all on the spectrum. So we are all on a spectrum of all behaviours. Some people are arguably kind of higher up than others. And also some people with those kind of psychopathic traits don't necessarily commit crime with them, but they might just be functioning in that way within their workplace. So again, I'm sure if we had long enough, lots of people could divulge their stories around their psychopathic managers that they've had in the past, potentially, or something similar.
Anybody like normal? Has everybody got somewhere some things that could always be improved, Serena?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think like that goes back to what I said at the start, that I just think that's why we're here. We are here to improve ourselves throughout our life. And my whole business is set up to focus on our evolution. And I just believe if we're not evolving, we're dying. There's nothing wrong with kind of pausing and staying still. And if anything's taught us that, it's been this year. And I think that is very needed in terms of just being able to pause and be okay with that and kind of, take what we need to in terms of reflecting on what's happened. But absolutely, I just really, really believe that we can always be learning about who we are and always improving.
Always room for improvement and self-development.
Absolutely, yeah. To the day I die, I hope to be learning something new about myself and other humans, because we could never know everything, and that's partly why it's so exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's great. Do we have any other questions from anybody?
No, but I love Ali, your know thyself. Yeah, and elf.
Sorry, that was me. I couldn't help that. Know thy elf was
yes. And sorry. Also Snakes in Suits is
the book. Cool. So we've all got issues. We're all
I didn't say that.
We all need to be fixed. Some of us have killed people, and therefore we've got a lot of things to be fixed. The rest of us, hopefully a little bit less needs to be fixed, but ultimately we can all improve. Thank you so much, Serena. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's so interesting. What we'll do is, if we get any last time, even if it's just 5-10 minutes at the end, we'll come back to, if anybody thinks of any other questions that they have for you before we sign off, then we'll come back to you then. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So I think everybody's taking a look at themselves now. We've forced everyone to do a bit of reflection, haven't we? I think with that, and be a bit self-aware, which is only a good thing, I'd say. But we're going to come on to our next speaker now, because it's good timing. We're about 2 minutes to 5, so that's good. And we've got the amazingly inspirational Steve Judge with us this evening. So just to tell you a little bit about Steve before I hand over to him. At the age of 28, a devastating car accident left Steve fighting for his life. And following life-saving operations, was subsequently told that he may never walk again. Not leaning on his excuses, he set goals, turning his excuses into challenges and learning to stand and walk again. And Steve continued his journey, which took him from wheelchair to 2 times world champion in the sport of para triathlon. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Steve Judge.
That's great. Thank you very much, Fiona. Can I just, do I have the ability to share my screen?
You do your end. If you just go to the bottom toolbar, it says share screen in green.
Okay, that's cool. I'm just going to make sure that I can do that. It's nice that I've got responsibility, so that's
There
good.
you go. Yeah.
So yeah, that's all working well and good. So just before I set off, it is a bit of a performance, like Fiona said, but I just want to make sure, because everybody's on mute. So as a speaker, sometimes you want to make sure that the audience is engaged. So if I say something that's good, just give me a thumbs up that you agree. So can we just do that just to make sure the communication is working? So give me a thumbs up. Okay, lots of good. Okay.
Better than that, Steve. I'll unmute myself and shout at you.
That would be lovely, Mark. Thank you so much. Right, if something's really good, give me a 2 thumbs up. So 2 thumbs up, just practice that. And the last one, because we do, kind of egotistic in a way, when we do something that's amazing, I want a round of applause, and that is jazz hands. So give me some jazz hands. There's nice visual jazz hands. Everybody doing that. Excellent. Now, I know some people have got their cameras off. That's absolutely fine. But if you do want to turn them on so I can see them, maybe at the end, if you want to give me applause, that would be great as well. Until then, until further ado, I will start the session. Go GB! Come on, Great Britain! So this is me. So I'm competing in China, Beijing, and it's the World Championships. And everybody's going crazy. And I'm running. To be honest, I've not done the whole triathlon. I've done the swim section and the bike section, and now I'm on the run section. So I'm running as fast as I can, and I'm looking over my shoulder, because behind me are the American and the French athletes. And as I'm looking over my shoulder, I'm also looking ahead, and I'm coming around the final corner. And the final corner is where the grandstand is. And as I come to the grandstand, I can see everybody on their feet, and they're cheering me on, and they're shouting, "Come on, Steve!" Which is amazing, because when I hear my name being shouted, I can't help but smile. But then I realize that as I'm smiling, it's very hard to breathe. So I have to say to myself, okay, Steve, stop smiling, just concentrate, just keep breathing, just concentrate. So I'm not smiling, I'm very, very serious, I'm running along, and I can see that thing in front of me, that thing that I've been driving towards, my goal, my vision, the finish line. And now I started getting really nervous. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, don't get too nervous, Steve. Just keep going. Just concentrate. Don't get nervous. Don't smile either. Keep breathing. And I run and I cross the finish line. And I remember as I crossed the finish line, I punched the air in triumph. I got, yeah. And I turned to the crowd and saluted them. And as I crossed the finish line, an official came over to me and he gave me a medal straight away. Let's see if I can just find it. Oh yes, here it is. So he gave me this medal here. And I was like, wow, that was great. Did I win? If it's silver, is it gold? It's like very shiny. And I was trying to read it. It's got some writing on it. The thing is, it's all in Chinese, and I can't read Chinese. So I'm looking on the back of it, and it's got some more writing. And it says here, it says finisher's medal. I went, oh, right, it's a finisher's medal. I look around me, and well, everybody's got a finisher's medal because, we finished the race. But then I realized that I was hugging this medal really tightly because this medal meant so much to me. Not only was I representing Great Britain, and not only had I just done a triathlon, which is amazing in itself, but 9 years before I got this medal put around my neck, I was told that I may never walk again. And so that's the journey, the story that I'd like to share with you today. Because, as I go through my journey, I want you to think about how it reflects to you. And as Fiona, I was talking to Fiona earlier, and she says, just remember, Steve, it's about the audience. It's not about you. And I was like, okay. So here's a question to everybody in the audience. I want you to think about what your goal is and what your goal is. Now, let me just explain before you ask me. I don't know what a goal is. So this is what I use. Goal stands for contempt. What are you contempt of? What's your obstacles at the moment? What's your anger? And what's your loathing? Now, Serena was talking about, knowing yourself and knowing your why is really important. And I always think there's a thing that pushes you away, but there's also a thing that pulls you. So have a think about that. Maybe write them down. If you've got a pen and paper in front of you, write that thing that's pushing you. Are you angry about something? I'm angry about the pandemic. I don't know about you, but that would be on my list of things that I would put down there. What are obstacles or contempt or loathing? Maybe your health, your fitness, your relationship, your vocation, maybe your finances. Now, on the other side of that is your gold. What's your gold? So what's your goal, your opportunity, your love, your desire? And these are the things that will drive you forward. These are the things that you'll take action and move towards. This is what you have when you have a vision. You don't want to be like that, but you do want to be like the gold. And I want you to start thinking about that. Again, get a pen, write those things down, or those things that drive you forward. because that's what you need to do. Now, as we go through my journey, I'm going to explain the wave of resilience and how it works. So you get this when you're taking action, when you have adversity, and we always come across adversity or change, or even when we push ourselves out of our comfort zone. You will have some kind of shock, denial, you will have anger that will drag you down. And while you're doing that, you will have a way of sharing that, maybe to one person, maybe on social media, but one way or another, you'll be sharing. And then you will hit rock bottom. Rock bottom, I would say, is where your coal is, where you don't want to be, the obstacles that are there, your anger, your loathing. So the next part of that is acceptance, accepting the situation that you're in, and then you can take action. And by taking action, it will bring you up the curve to your self-actualization. And surely that's where you want to be. And that, I would say, is your gold. So have a think about what your coal is, what your gold is throughout my presentation, so that you can relate more and more. Until then, it is actually all about me. So I'm going to talk about my journey, and this takes me back to when I was a child. We've already talked about that with Serena, about a lot of things happen when you're children. And this is how I was formed. I loved running. Running was my passion. I would run everywhere and anywhere. This is me. I'm on the end. That's my brother first, then my dad, then my mum, the dog, my sister, and me. And we were always run as a family. I loved that. I loved it for the freedom. The other thing I loved as a kid was scouting. Scouting, I loved it for the fun, the challenge, the adventure, the life skills, the opportunities. I used to love those badges. Put your hand up. Give me a thumbs up if you're in scouting or guiding, or if you still are. Got a few people. So I loved it for the badges. I used to be that scout that used to take the badge book home, and I used to find the next badge that I wanted. And when I found that badge, then I'd go and ask for help from my mum, my dad, the scout leader, of course, and they would help me to work towards it and achieve it. I didn't realize then, but I was actually setting goals and working towards them. And when I left school, I worked down the coal pits of Yorkshire. So I did this, and much as I enjoyed the job, I felt that I wasn't destined to stay there. I felt that there was more than I could do. And because of that, I took myself to night classes, and I studied, and I passed my BTEC and my HNC, and I became an engineer. Now I carried on working down the coal pits, but now as an engineer, I was constantly given problems and having to find solutions. And I loved it. At the coalface, you could not lean on excuses. If that machine broke down, I had to find a solution. I had to be ingenious with the ideas that I came up with, robbing parts from broken down machines to get my machine up and running. And once I did that, I got the hell out of there because it was dirty and dusty. But I liked the job. I liked being an engineer. And my father, he got cancer, and he fought it for 7 years. During that time, I'd say that he never, ever gave in. But after 7 years, it beat him. And he passed away in 1996. For me, I carried on running because running was my passion. Running was the thing that I really enjoyed. Running gave me some kind of belief to run away from. So that brings us all the way up to 2002. So I'm driving on the outskirts of Sheffield, where I live. And it's a rainy day. And the rain's coming down and the water's on the road. And as I'm driving along, the car skids. And it's really, really bad. And the car's skidding and the rain coming down. And it's just, I don't know what to do. I'm just hanging on to dear life. And as I'm hanging on, the car's skidding. And then eventually I hit this pole. And this pole just like crashes. And I go, ah! And everybody came to save me. The police, the fire brigade, the ambulance. And as they did this, they pulled me out of the car. They had to cut the car apart piece by piece, eventually getting me out of the car along with my legs and then putting me into a nearby waiting ambulance. Now that ambulance took me to the nearby hospital, which is the hospital in Sheffield. But on the way there, the two guys in the ambulance, I can remember very clearly, the two guys are called Steve and Steve. And I can remember going, "Are you okay, Steve?" And I was like, yeah, I'm good, Steve. So, okay, Steve, that's great, Steve. We're going to go very fast, Steve. And, okay, Steve, that's good, Steve. And very safely, Steve. I said, okay, that's good, Steve. So I like Steve. Steve's are good. Right, let me just adjust something here because I've just want to play this. Just play this a little bit more. Okay, so I got to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, the thing they needed to do was to save my life. They gave me lots of blood. And that was really good. I needed the blood to survive. And then they looked at my legs And they said, okay, Mr. Judge, we're going to see what we can do. But with the severity of your injuries, we may, have to even amputate your leg. These aren't the words that I thought I'd hear that day. And I can remember looking into the surgeon's eyes and saying, please, just do the best that you can. And with that, they took me off into the nearby, the surgeon took me into the waiting room and then into the operating theatre. But on that day, I found out later that they lied to me, because it wasn't just my legs that they were trying to save. It was my life. I'd been involved in a terrible accident and I'd lost a lot of blood, and they didn't know whether I was going to survive or die. And that's the message that my mum received on that night with a phone call, hearing that she might not see her younger son ever again. Worse than that, she then had to relay that message onto my brother and my sister, who lived down south. They both burst into tears, hearing that they might not see their younger brother ever again. Now, the operation lasted about 8 hours, and when I came to, I felt terrible. I must admit, I just like lying there, just in so much pain and agony. And I remember my shoulders were aching as well. It was just like a terrible situation. And it was around this time, and I could hear this voice calling me. And it was saying, Steve, wake up, Steve. I recognized the voice. It was my mum's voice, who traveled overnight to be with me at my bedside. As I sat up, I saw my mum. I scanned the room and I saw 2 other familiar figures, my brother and my sister, who traveled overnight to be with me when I needed them most. It was around this time when the surgeon was doing his rounds, and he came over to my bed. He said, how are you feeling, Mr. Judge? I said, I feel really groggy. He says, okay, I understand. He says, but I just want to let you know that we did our best that we could. We managed to save your legs, but I'm really sorry that with the severity of your injuries, you may never walk again. Now, I think when somebody says something like that to you, definitely for me, it's like a fight or flight situation. The flight being, I could have just given in, rolled over on the bed and just said, okay, I guess I'll never walk again. But there was something inside me that was really angry at somebody saying that. And I guess that's the fight in a way. I can remember looking up at the surgeon thinking, who are you? Who are you to tell me that I may never walk again? I mean, your name's not even Steve, because, I like Steve's, like in the ambulance. Steve's are good. His name was Simon. Who's Simon? Anyway, the thing is that he had a point. My injuries are really, really bad. Let me try and explain. My left leg was ripped apart at the knee. So the knee was just ripped apart. The 4 ligaments that hold it together were just ripped out. My right leg was even worse than that, was partially amputated, which means 4 inches of bone was knocked out. So let me explain with the aid of a prop. So you can see this prop here. Imagine this is my tibia bone in my right leg. This was broken once, twice, leaving 4 inches of bone that was considered no good by the surgeons in the operating theatre. And consequently, this part was just thrown away. And that left me with a very short leg. And that's what I woke up to. And it was going to be my responsibility to get that leg to the right length again and grow it and make it strong again. Now, I know I've just explained it, but I've got also an x-ray here, that x-ray slide. Does anybody want to see the x-ray slide? Just give me a thumbs up if you want to see the slide. A few thumbs up. Okay, let's do the slide. So you can see here the x-ray. So you can see the 4 inches of bone that was knocked out. And that was terrible, that was really bad. And that, just like I said, just thrown away into the bin. Now I've got the next slide. Do you want to see the next slide? It's a bit more gory. There's no blood or anything, but do you want to see that? Give me a thumbs up if you want to see that. Yeah, okay. Let's do that then. Okay, there you go. So what do you think about that? It's horrible, isn't it? So you've got the nuts and the bolts, and it was my job to twist those bolts day after day after day, stretching the skin and the muscle and wrenching the bone apart to form a gap of 4 inches. And that's what I had to do. Now let's just have a recap on where I was on the wave of resilience. I'd been through the shock and the denial. I was now at the anger. I'd done the anger stage, when I was told that I may never walk again. I've done the sharing. And the sharing was in the form of a diary that I was writing at the time. And that's definitely at my rock bottom, my coal, as I would say, you know, contempt, the agonizing, the anger, the loathing. But that's the next part was the acceptance. But, you know, I wasn't there yet. And I'm talking about the sharing part. I wrote this diary and I found this. This is like 30 days after the accident. I was still in hospital and I'd written this. Today was a good day because today was the first time I didn't cry. I'd cried every single day, my mum's arms, with a burning question, why me? Why me? There's clearly no answer to that. But it shows how traumatized I was. But also, if you look at this, about my sharing, about this diary, today was a good day because today was the first day I didn't cry. At this moment, I'd taken acceptance of the situation. As Serena says, this is a moment in my time when I actually pulled myself together and said, right, I'm now going to take action. Just like the wave of resilience, I was now accepting the situation and thinking, what do I have to do? And that's one thing I did a lot, asking myself all the time, what more can I do? What more can I do? What more can I do? Now, I don't know about you, but how do you grow bone back? Because I had to grow 4 inches of bone. I just thought you drank lots of milk or maybe ate lots of cheese. I can remember the surgeon saying, I said, no, Mr. In fact, there was a bit posh, aren't they? Glasses, very official. Oh, no, Mr. Judge, no, you don't just drink milk and eat cheese. No, you've got to stand on your leg. You've got to walk on your leg. You've got to trust the cage. And I'm like, trust the cage? You trust the cage. But this is what I had to do. And that meant that I had to stand and walk on my leg. And now, where I live in Sheffield, it's very hilly, but, you know, similar to Nottingham, it's a bit hilly down there as well. But I needed somewhere flat. So I found this place called Rother Valley. I don't know if anybody knows Rother Valley. And the thing is, yeah, a few thumbs up, things it's flat. Okay, so I drove myself down there, my hand controls car, and I had my crutches in the back. And my goal was to, you know, do some walking on the flat, on the path. And as I got there, you know, the rain was coming down. The rain was coming down really, really heavily. And I was thinking, right, I've got to do this. And I was gritting myself as I was holding on tight. And I was like taking one step. And the pain would shoot through me, making me feel cold and lightheaded. And again, step by step, I suddenly realized that the park bench in front of me was actually closer than my car in the car park. Getting this park bench, I sat down and I rested and recovered. And I wiped the tears away. I looked at my watch. It said 36 minutes. I looked at my pedometer that I'd worn, half a mile. Half a mile in that amount of time? It was a joke. You know, I used to be a runner. I just felt demoralized, defeated. I just thought, what's the point? Why am I even bothering doing this? And then I looked down at my leg with the cage on, and I could see that all the pins were bleeding and the blood was trickling down and being soaked up by my sock. At that point, I realized I couldn't have gone any further. I couldn't have done any more. I realized that I'd been the best that I could be. With that, I realized that I started to feel a bit cold. I knew what was going on. I had to get back to the car. I picked myself up and I walked back to the car, step by step, grunting out loud on every single step, getting back to the car, closing the door so that nobody could see me cry. Driving home, I got home, I collapsed. That night, I had a sleepless night with muscle spasms. The next day, I was completely exhausted. And the day after that, I got up and I did it all again. Because that's what I needed to do. To achieve my goal, to achieve my vision of standing again and walking again and growing this bone back. And I want you to ask yourself, what do you need to do? What do you need to do to achieve your goal? Again, maybe write it down, get a pen, write that stuff down. Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Have you got to ask for help? Maybe go for a counseling session with Serena. I don't know. But think about what you need to do to move forward or even to move away. Move away from your goal, move forward towards your goal. So I was doing that, and, you know, sometimes I fell and many times I cried. But I kept going down to Rother Valley, walking that path, and eventually I got past that first park bench and I was able to get onto the next park bench. And after that, for my next session, I set my goals onto the next park bench. And the session after that, around the top of the lake and onto the next park bench. It's a good story about benchmarking here, really, if you think about it, because going forward. the thing is that all the time, I was thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. And that included going from bench to bench and not leaning on my excuses. And there's a big message I want to hand out to you. Is the next time you think that there's something that you can't do, is that true? Or are you leaning on your excuses? Or next time somebody tells you that you can't do something, is that true? Or are you leaning on your excuses? And if you are, I'd urge you to turn your excuses into challenges and move forward. So my bone did grow back after a year and a half. The cage was released. I was able to stand again and walk again. My goal was very much about getting back to normal. And when I got to that stage, I realized that there is no such thing. I was very different to what I was before the accident. My left leg had lack of feeling, lack of movement, and a numbness. My right leg had lack of movement, a lot of pain as well. And I suddenly realized that there was no such thing as normal. Again, another message I hand out, especially to the schools, is that there's no such thing. So stop comparing yourself to others, to your friends, to your family, to your colleagues, to celebrities. Everybody's different. And I was very different. I had to start thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. I couldn't run anymore, but I could swim. So I started swimming. Eventually, I got onto a proper bike and started cycling. That was amazing. I started setting myself goals and doing some charity events. And it was awesome. And somebody said to me, Steve, you're always setting goals and working towards them. Have you always been like this? And I was trying to think back to my childhood, as Serena would say, going back to past events and issues and things. I was thinking, have I always been setting goals? And it took me back to scouting because, I love the badges. And that urged me to go and see if I could find some old photos in the loft. So what I did is I got my torch and I went up into the loft, and there I was rummaging around looking for photos, and I found a box of photos in the end. And inside that, I found a photo of me when I was 9.5 and about 10 years old. And you can see here on my arm, I've got the shield. I just got cover of the year. But the first three badges that I ever got in scouting was swimming, cycling, and running. And that just urged me to find a new goal, a new thing that I could do. I was thinking, wow. But while I was in the loft, I was rummaging around and I saw this box of my travel mementos. And I found this thing called a Goen. Now, this is a 5 yen coin. So the story goes back to when I was traveling. I was working down the coal pits. They closed down. And so I went off traveling around the world, earning my keep as I traveled, ended up in Australia, ended up being locked down in, because the floods came in a place called Halls Creek. And I was stuck there with a guy from Japan. And over the series of a couple of days, I helped him to speak English. And as a thank you gift, he gave me this 5 yen coin. He said, Steve, this is called a Goen, and this will bring you good karma, good luck, but only if you're aware of your vision and you seize opportunities. I said, okay, thank you very much. He went off to die. I felt a bit guilty. I didn't have a gift to give to him, but I had this coin. I put it in my pocket. And on that day, I went out into the outback. And my vision, my goal was to go and find this thing called the Natural Wall of China. It's a white granite vein, and all the rock has eroded either side of it, so it looks like a wall. It's called the Natural Wall of China. So I went into the outback and walking around, and my sandal broke, and I had to fix it with tape, but I wasn't going to give in. And eventually I found this wall, and it was just amazing. I got there and I climbed up the wall, and I managed to take this awesome photo. This is in the days when you didn't know whether the photo was going to come out or not. So I took this amazing photo. My camera was actually hanging in a tree to take this. And it was just epic. And it was when I put my hands down, I put my hand in my pocket and I felt that Goen coin. And I thought, now I get it. Getting here on this wall, I was aware of my vision and I'd seized the opportunity to do it. Anyway, I found this coin in the loft. And I thought, as I was holding it, I'm thinking, I'm going to need this, a bit of good luck, a bit of good karma going forward if I'm going to try and do a triathlon. So I went down and I searched this thing on this thing called Google and typed in triathlon and found one. And there was a nice local one. It happened to be at Rother Valley. I was like, well, that's brilliant. What an opportunity. As I scrolled down, there's this thing called a triathlon for disabled people. So I was thinking, well, I don't know if I'm disabled or not. I'm not sure. So I went down to go and get assessed. They asked me lots of questions. They did some fitness exercises and they said, Mr. Judge, you are disabled. And I'm like, yes, this is great. This is good. Because now I had no more excuses to lean on. Now I could compete as a disabled athlete. And they said, Mr. Judge, can you run? And I said, not yet. But now I had a goal. Running had been stolen from me for 7.5 years. but now I had a goal to go for it. So I remember going out for my first run, and my brain knew what to do, but my legs didn't quite know whether they could or not. And I remember looking down at my legs, I was running along going, wow, I'm running again. I've got that thing that I love. I've got it back. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And now I had it back again. It was amazing. The thing is, while the adrenaline, the endorphin were pumping, I didn't feel the pain. It's only when I stopped, when the pain came. It was so bad that the next day I couldn't run. So I thought about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. And I went swimming. The day after that, the pain was still there. So I cycled. And the day after that, the pain has subsided. So I ran again because I love to run. And that was my training montage: swimming, cycling, and then running. And that was took me all the way up to the first triathlon down at Rother Valley. I remember going down there, first power triathlon, going down there, meeting disabled athletes from around the UK. These were amazing people with missing arms, missing legs, visually impaired or completely blind, doing a triathlon. So I queued up to get my race number. Everybody's there. My mum was there, my brother, my sister, some friends, some family and friends. And I queued up to get my number. Now, the date of it was the 6th of June. It happened to be exactly 11 years from when my father had passed away. Exactly 11 years. And when I got my race number, I couldn't believe it, that it was number 11. I just felt that my father was going to be with me every step of the way. I put my wetsuit on, and I got ready into the water. And when you're there, you're just waiting. You're waiting for the horn to go off. You can hear my heart beating. So swimming as fast as I can, swimming. I come out the swim, I take my wetsuit off, and I grab my bike. So now I'm cycling as fast as I can, going all the way around the park, holding on, doing the brakes. I come to the end of the cycle section, and I wrap my bike. I'm now winning in first place in my category. There's about 6 different categories. So I'm on the run section, 5K. So now I set off running, again, as fast as I can, pacing myself a little bit. And as I'm going around Rother Valley, the part where I did my rehabilitation, I can see those park benches. And I can see a vision of myself sat down on those park benches in pain and in tears. And I remember thinking, that's not me anymore. Look at me now. Look at what I've achieved. And that compelled me to go even further and faster. 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K. As I'm coming round the final corner, I could see my family, my mum there, my brother, my sister. They were up on their feet and they were waving their arms. They're cheering me on. And I was going at hell for leather as fast as I could.
Go on, Steve! Come on! Steve!
And I crossed the finish line, and on that day, I became British champion in my category. It was such an amazing feeling. I mean, I was in tears, absolute tears. I remember picking my son up and just hugging him like a teddy bear. He was in tears, I was in tears. People asked me, what does it feel like? It's just a massive relief because of all the hard work that I'd done. Running down that final straight, I had been running away from my cold, running away from the contentness, running away from the obstacles and the anger and the loathing. I wanted to prove that the accident hadn't had a detrimental effect on my life. But I'd also been running towards my goals, running towards my opportunities, my love, my desire. And as I crossed the finish line, one of the officials came over to me and said, "Mr. Judge, congratulations, you are British champion. Would you like to represent Great Britain?" And I'm like, hell yeah, I would love that. The thing is, this is very much about opportunities. So, they're around us all the time. You've got to see them. You've got to hear them. You've got to smell them. You've got to grab hold of them with both hands and do something about it. And that's what I was prepared to do. I wanted to represent Great Britain and take it even further and set new goals. And that's what I did over the next couple of years. I set goals and I started working towards them. Now, I was competing around the world. I was still working full time, and it was not easy. It was not easy to do because, with a full-time job, sometimes I got injured as well. And so I was thinking about my mentality, my mindset. I started doing yoga and Tai Chi. As an elite athlete, you start considering every single thing that you can do and asking yourself, what more can you do? What more can you do? What more can you do? Competing in the European Championships was amazing. And again, I received gold medal accolades throughout. I was training as much as I could. I was getting up early at 5:30 in the morning. I was going to swimming before I went to work. Then I worked all morning. At lunchtime, I'd go for a run. And then in the afternoon, go back to work. And then in the evening, I'd play with the kids, put the kids to bed, and then go out to my bike. I was always thinking about how I could get my training in because that was so important for me to work towards my goal. My goal now was to become a world champion. And that took me all the way to Beijing 2011. And that was amazing, just meeting the athletes from around the world, the para athletes from around the world. Again, athletes with missing arms, missing legs, visually impaired or completely blind doing a para triathlon. Amazing people. I got my wetsuit on and got ready. And this time it's all very official. They announce you in and everything. Getting really nervous, and you get into the water, heart beating again. You're waiting for on your marks. So swimming as fast as I can, I get out of the swim and I'm winning in my category against the rest of the world. I grab my bike and now I'm cycling round the reservoir that we just swam in China, round there. The thing is, there's so many different categories. You're not too sure who's in your category or not. And as I'm cycling along, people are overtaking me, other cyclists are overtaking me. And I'm thinking, are they, I don't know, I'm not too sure. I'm literally looking to see how many legs they've got or how many arms they've got to find out, oh, no, let them go. No, chase that one. So I'm doing all the cycling until I get to the end of that. I wrap my bike and now I'm on the 5K. The 5K run, this is it for me to become world champion. And I set off like a rocket as fast as I can. As I'm running along, I'm looking behind me. You've got the American athlete, you've got the French athlete who are catching me up bit by bit. But also, personally, I know that I'm running away from my goal, from my obstacles, from my loathing, from my anger, from an unsupportive wife, from an unsupportive employer, from a bullying boss. Those were the things, out of unhappiness, that's what I was running away from. But I was also running towards my goal. My goals, my opportunities, my love and my desire. And as I come around the final corner, everybody's going crazy. Everybody's standing on their feet one by one, cheering on. And across the finish line, and on that day, I grabbed the gold medal. Ta-da! You can give me a virtual round of applause there. There's the gold medal. And it was just an amazing feeling crossing the finish line. Again, such relief, a sense of feeling of relief for all the hard work that I'd done, all the pain that I'd submitted on myself through rehabilitation, but also through the training as well. It was just such an amazing feeling to have all the crowd there supporting me. It was just incredible feeling. You know, being able to stand on the podium and hear the national anthem being played in my honor as I represented my country. It's just those memories that definitely come back to me when I think back into my life. So where am I now? Whew. So I'm exhausted, that's where I am now. But I've retired now from international competition. One of the first things I did is I wanted to give something back. So as you can imagine, being involved in scouting in my past, I thought I'd go back down and volunteer. So I'm now a Cub Scout leader, giving fun, challenge, adventure to the kids of the new generation, giving them life skills as well and opportunities. Now, as you can imagine, we can't do the face-to-face contact at the moment because of this pandemic. We're doing it all virtual, and that's really good fun. We did cooking on Monday, which is awesome. We did mug cakes. They were really tasty as well. I'm now as an international motivational speaker, and I love standing on the stage and helping people, inspiring others and motivating many. Again, I can't do that face-to-face now, but I'm not leaning on my excuses. I'm doing what I can do, doing it virtual. I'm also thinking about what more I can do. So I'm doing my workshops, my wave of resilience, helping people in these troubling times with their resilience. It's like a muscle that you can build up. Stagecoach Gold is very much about, I believe that everybody's got a story inside them. And if they want to share that story to help others, then I want to give them the skills and the tools to be able to do that correctly and efficiently. The last workshop that I do is Your Vision, Your Gold, helping people not only to find out what their goal is, but also giving them the tools so they can work towards it and achieve it. And this is what I want to do all the time. If anybody's been inspired today and anybody wants me to help them or just get in contact, please just drop me. If you put the word gold in the chat, then we can follow up afterwards. It's not a problem. I'm available on LinkedIn as well, which is a really good social media site that I use a lot. Now, a lot of people said to me, Steve, an amazing story you've got. Have you got a book? I said, I haven't got a book. They said, you should have a book. you should have a book. Why haven't you got a book? I said, I don't know. I haven't got a book. I said, you need to write a book. So I thought, okay. So I set writing a book as my goal, and I achieved that in 2019. And now, I think I have a copy here. Now I have my book. My book. Oh, and Fiona's got her book as well. Aptly named, Don't Lean on Your Excuses. And it's really cool because I'm an author now. And you just think, wow, no, what's next? What's next? The thing is, like Fiona said right at the beginning, or like I referred to, it's not about me. It's about you. And I want you to think about what your coal is and what your gold is and how you can go from coal to gold. What are those things that really drive you, really push you? What are you upset about? What are you annoyed with? What are you loathing? What are you angry about? What are you going to do about that? What are the things that you really want? What are your goals, your opportunities, your love and your desires? What are you going to do about that? You know, on your journey, there's going to be many times when you feel that you failed. You've got to understand that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. You've got to understand that sometimes it's going to be hard to achieve your goal. Don't ever change the goal. Change the plan. You've got to make sure that all the time you're not leaning on your excuses, and instead you're turning your excuses into challenges. And if you do that, I believe that everybody can be the best that they can be. And if they are the best that you can be, then I know that you'll have no regrets. And more than that, you will achieve your gold. Thank you very much. Thank you. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, we can do questions in a bit. And then I've got a video, just a very short video that I can play as well. So if there's any questions from Matt or Fiona or from anybody else from the audience, please shout out.
Steve, thank you so much. That was incredible. I am pretty speechless, actually, and I think many of us probably are as well. I just feel like I need to take a moment, actually. It's amazing to hear your story. I know that, Matt, you've opened up the live chat to questions, so feel free to pop those on there for Steve now if you've got any. And Matt will pick up on
I've got
them.
one from Ali saying, do you believe in fate? I don't actually believe in coincidences. I believe that there's like millions of things that happen all the time, and it's whether or not you're open to receiving those coincidences, as it were. It's a case of, I believe that things happen. Lots of things happen throughout our lives all the time. It's about what you do about those things that happened. So it's like we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to those things that happen to us. And it's about knowing your subconscious as well as your conscious. And that's why having a vision is always so important to me, because that taps into your subconscious, taps into your RAS, your reticular activating system. And I don't know if anybody knows about your RAS, but if somebody said, oh, I'm going to buy a red car, the next day you'll see lots of red cars on the road, for example. If you know what you want, if you have a vision, I do a visionary every single morning so that I know what I'm tuned into. And then I see those coincidences because they're jumping out at me, and then I grab hold of them. And more than that, I take action. So that's one of the things I do. But yeah, I manipulate the fate thing a little bit to make it work in my favor. I think hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions?
Thank you, Steve. I've got a question actually for you, and it's an observation / question. You mentioned about, well, I mean, your whole story, but most people in your situation, more than average amount of people, would have resided themselves, I think, to the fact that they were never going to walk again. So my question is, where does your determination come from? Because you clearly are a very determined individual and a very competitive individual as well. Obviously being sporty, and you've got a sport background also pre-accident. And I imagine that kind of contributed towards it. But where does your determination come from?
So I think in a way, okay, first of all, nobody knows. Nobody really knows when you're in that situation how you would react. Some people might give in and say, okay, I guess I'll just not do it. You don't know when something's taken away from you that's so precious, standing and walking. You might step up to the mark and you might say, bring it on. I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. It's like a red rag to a bull. It might not be that. It might be about something else. You might have had it in your past when somebody says, you're no good at qualifications. You're thick. You're stupid. You will never run a successful business. those things might get your fire going, and that will push you on. So it's about finding that thing that gets your fire going, that thing that really drives you. For me, it happened to be about somebody saying I might not walk again. And I was like, what? Since when? I don't like that. And I think that I've used that a lot. I think I've always been slightly competitive because I enjoyed the running and the sport and the Cub badges. And I think what happened was having the car accident, the event that changed my life, it made everything emphasized more. So I suddenly realized that you do only get one life and you got to live it. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but when it happens to you, it's a wake-up call. And so I'm now grabbing every opportunity that I possibly can within reason. You know, so all the things that I was doing before the accident about setting goals, about my fitness, about my health, it's now been emphasized. And now I'm using it to actually be successful in things that I set out to do. Things like rehabilitation. I want to be successful in that. Like becoming a world champion. I want to be successful. Running a business. It's not easy. And especially these times, it's very challenging. I will not give in. I will not let this pandemic, this COVID-19 beat me. That's how I see it. I'm grit, determination, and I'm going to make it work one way or another. If I can't do speaking, I'll do workshops. If I can't do workshops, I'll do one-to-ones. I'll do Zoom, I'll do virtual. I will not give in until I decide. If I decide to quit, then okay, that's different. I haven't decided. I feel that somebody else is trying to take it away from me. And hopefully, I'm sure the audience feel that in themselves as well. That when somebody tells you can't do something, you're like, says who? So find out what that thing is. Find out what that burning desire is and use it. I don't believe that anger is a bad thing, as long as you use it correctly. I don't believe that impatience is a bad thing, as long as you use it correctly. And the same with competitiveness. Using it in the right way, you can achieve so much. So be open with yourself and understand that.
Steve, quick question. Awesome presentation, man. Seriously, like I love the whole, like the drama of it, but then actually the content was just like epic. Question for you. Obviously, you know, you mentioned you're working with the Scouts and you're helping kids and stuff like that. Have you been able to help other people who've recently been in accidents and things like that? Because this story, like, you know, could give people a lot of hope, you know, who've been in that kind of situation. It's inspirational to the rest of us, but I'm just thinking about, you know, other people that may have gone through accidents that might need to hear this.
So I've been to hospital once or twice, only really early on. After that, I've done a few phone calls and done some videos for people, but generally I'd say the answer is no, because I don't know. I mean, if anybody's got any opportunities for me to do that, then yeah, give me a shout. And like I said, my goal is to help, inspire, motivate, and that can be in various ways. It can be at a hospital, it can be in a business conference, it could be one-to-one coaching. I just want to help people. So that's one way I could do it. And I do believe it would really help them, really be beneficial. I would have loved something like that when I was in hospital. The NHS, they saved my life. They're amazing. However, once you're better, they get you out the door and off you go. And I was better and they kind of got rid of me. And I understand that. However, it would have been nice to have a little bit more of some coaching, some psychological profile, somebody to say, hey, Steve, this is not the end. Is the fact that I was driven and I was committed and I was competitive, that I found sport, I found swimming myself and cycling myself and power triathlon myself. And that was good. I used Google as well, very useful. It would have been nice if somebody had said, Steve, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? Are you aware of this group, that group? There wasn't any of that at the time. So, I think the internet's helped as well. And maybe, that's something that people do. And I think Paralympics has been, massively grown over the last 10, 20 years. So that's really good as well. But, if like I said, if anyone's got any opportunities for me to go into hospitals or to speak to patients, give me a shout.
Nice. Thank you very much. We should totally try and make that happen.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to sort of comment on was about, you mentioned in your talk about your family quite a lot and being on the sidelines cheering you on, and relating it back to business. You had a really good network of people around you that were supporting you. Would you say that that's a really important element in life in general, but also in business, to surround yourself with the right kind of people that, I guess, are your people? Serena mentioned earlier about her people. How important is it to make your circle a quality, supportive circle, if you're speaking on the networking side of things?
Very important. Having the right people. You end up being an average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, the people that you associate with. I love being a member of the PSA, Professional Speaking Association. I was president last year. What I love about that, the main reason is going into the room, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, and being in a room full of speakers. Being a speaker is a very strange job. It's like it's kind of strange in various ways. So to relate to other people that are going through the highs and the lows is really, really important. Networking, really, really important. Being around people that are driven. I've done my values for my business. There's only me in my business at the moment, because eventually I will have lots of people like admin and marketing and stuff like that. So what are my values? What kind of people am I looking for? And I came up with a list of about 20 or 30 values. And you start naming lots of obvious things, like you want them to be honest. Well, of course you want them to be honest, but what unique values do you want? And I think my values are what I've just been talking about. I want to be around people that do not lean on their excuses. I want to be around people that turn their excuses into challenges and push themselves. I want to aspire to be like those people. So I do believe it's very important. And I've had people in rehabilitation, nurses, surgeons, admin staff help me. As an elite athlete, I've had various coaches, swimming, cycling, running, triathlon, nutritionists that have helped me. In my business, I've got a business coach, and I've got people, next to me that helped me in marketing and all sorts. But, and I put this in the book as well, the one person that's helped me the most, as well as my family and friends, the one person that's helped me the most throughout all of this on my journey, and still does, is me. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's not being big-headed, it's taking responsibility. I'm the one that sets my alarm to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I make my sandwiches. I'm the one that pushes myself. I'm the one that tells myself to look after myself, Matt. You've got to do that. You've got to look after your wellness. Because if you can't even get to the start line, you can't even compete. And I really want to compete. I'm not going to take this lying down. So you've got to listen to yourself. So the person that I thank the most and admire the most is myself. And I will continue to do that.
Great. And you mentioned, Steve, about mindset a little bit as well. And I'm interested to delve a bit more into that, because I know you had a few tools along the way after reading your book that helped you with getting into the right mindset. And you mentioned a few as well. I hope you don't mind, but I'll mention that your music is a big thing to you, and your playlist, your inspiring playlist, which, I think you've got a bit of Chesney Hawkes on there and a bit of Gary Barlow, which is great.
It's a mixture. I think it's also got AC/DC on it as well. So there's a real, so I have a playlist at the beginning of the book, and it's suggestions of what I listen to for each chapter. But yes, music helps me a lot. My mindset, let me just go through my morning routine very, very quickly, because I think that really starts the day. So I wake up at 5:30. I practice Wugu. So if anybody doesn't know what Wugu is, it's W-U-G-U. W-U-G-U. Wugu stands for wake up, get up. It's not easy. You wake up, you get up. None of this snoozing business, none of this, what shall I do today? You hear the alarm go off, you get out of bed. Wugu. After that, I do some reading, some personal development book. And that's really good as I'm waking up. After that, I'll do my journal for maybe about 15-20 minutes. I've only just started doing that. It's a new edition. It's working well for me at the moment. After that, I'll get on the floor, do some floor exercises, some press ups, sit ups, some chin ups. Then I'll do a visualization. I sit down in a yoga pose and I just close my eyes and I visualize what I want in the future. Is that today, maybe the week, maybe the month, maybe a year, 5-year plan? It doesn't really matter. I visualize whatever comes into my head, but it's all positive. And I stop my visualization when I smile, because that means I've reached something that I really, really am passionate about, that I want to do. I open my eyes, I'm smiling, I go down and do my rowing. My rowing machine is really, really important to me. I do about 20 minutes on that. It's about 4,000 meters. And that is beneficial for me in so many ways. One, it's adrenaline and endorphin, and I need that. I'm still waking up at this time. So sometimes I'm yawning when I start, but by the time of it, by the time I finish, I'm buzzing. On the rowing machine, I can zone out. That to me is meditation. I've tried meditation. I've tried leading meditation. It didn't work for me. I just kept on falling asleep. So the rowing machine really helps for me just to zone out and just let my mind float around a little bit and let thoughts come into my mind. I have also got the playlist that I listen to. It's all forever changing, but it's awesome. And that to me is my words of affirmation. Words of affirmation I've got on a sheet on my vision wall that I can see now, and I used to read them. But I find now, because it's the same ones every single day, it didn't quite work. Whereas on my rowing machine, the tunes, you know, if you choose the right tunes, you can do this, you're not going to quit, you're the best, all of this, all these rocky tunes and everything. If you sing along to them, you're actually saying the words of affirmation. So by the time I've finished the rowing machine, I am hyper, and that takes me to about 7 o'clock. And that is my mindset. I'm ready to go to my office and hit the ground running. Obviously, I've got to wake the kids up first and feed them and get them ready for homeschooling now. But when I sit down at my desk, I know exactly what I'm doing. I can look at my journal. I can look at the things that I want to do. Now, on an addition of that, very quickly, I've now just started an evening routine. The evening routine is, because the morning routine only works if you go to bed on time. You've got to get the sleep in, like 7.5 hours or whatever. So I need to get to bed at 10, but I need good sleep. So what I do is I do 3 things that I've achieved that day. Well done, pat on the back. 3 things that I'm going to do the next day. What are my goals? 3 gratifications. So, you know, what am I really grateful for? And then I do a little bit of reading, light reading, nothing too heavy, and a little bit of meditation, because like I said, meditation sends me to sleep. Perfect. So even that might just be breathing in, breathing out for 5 times, and then I drift off to sleep and have the most beautiful sleep, ready to start it all over again in the morning. So that's my mindset. Hopefully that works, and people can use some of that as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, because, you know, routine is so key, isn't it? I think, to keeping yourself accountable and encouraging yourself to stick to your goals. And that sounds like you've got an incredible routine going there, morning and evening now. I think you've certainly inspired me. I know I've kind of come into 2021 with a bit of a routine every morning, and I think we have to focus on that a bit more now, would you say? With us being in a pandemic, especially at the moment, we're at home a lot. All of our routines have kind of gone out of the window, and we're all kind of finding ourselves in a new situation. So I think, would you say that at the moment, especially, routine is really important for our mental health?
Yeah, routine. I swear by this because of last year, the first lockdown. Routine dragged me through that period. It was a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes I was in tears on the rowing machine. Sometimes I was just grumpy. I don't know. But every single day I did the routine, even if it was just a little bit, even if I just read one line in my book, or just did my visualization a little bit, or just did 5 minutes on the rowing machine, or just did something. I kept the routine. I started doing Facebook Lives at 7 o'clock every single morning. That then held me accountable, because people were waiting, wanted to hear the quotes of the day. It was really good. And because of that, that's why I've carried on with my routine and will forever do it. I mean, I did it as an elite athlete, but I think more so now that I'm seeing the benefits. There's no point doing something if you don't realize why you're doing it. This is why you have to try lots of different things. Try lots of things. All the advice that people give you, at least try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, park it and then do something else.
Absolutely, Matt.
Yeah, I just got a quick question. I just wondered if Serena would be happy to come in and share her thoughts on Steve's story, and you know, obviously positive, I'm sure. You know, what did you make of what Steve said there? And do you have anything to add around routines, mental health, any sort of tips like that for us?
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing, Steve. It's a really inspiring story. Thank you. I think we're very aligned in a lot of the things that you've spoken about, which is lovely. And yeah, I really agree with what he said about routine. There's very little that we feel we're in control of at the moment, because so much feels out of our control, but we can control our routine. Hopefully most of us can, as much as possible. So I think that little bit of sense of control is really important during this time. And our brain responds really well to that, because it feels like there is something that we actually can influence. And so if you can incorporate some things into your day that kind of keep you quite grounded, that, you know, encourage yourself to move and move your body, kind of ticks a lot of the boxes, kind of mind, body, spirit, then yeah, I couldn't agree more with kind of incorporating that.
Great.
Nice, excellent. Thanks for adding. We did
I've
have
got a
another.
video.
Go on, Steve. Come on in.
Yeah, I've got a video. Can I play the video? It's just like 3 minutes. We've got time, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah, we'd love to. And we also had one other quick question, which you could probably answer very briefly, which was, does your leg still look quite as bad?
Yeah.
Or has it sort of...
I can't get up there. I can't.
No, don't get up there. Don't hurt yourself.
Lift my leg up there. I'm standing up. Yes, it does. It still looks... Yeah, you know, they put skin on. It was really strange. They put skin from the top of my leg, just like a potato peeler. They peeled the skin off and they put it on the bottom leg. And they had to do that twice for it to grow back. So the skin is all new. But there might be some pictures on the internet or something. But yeah, it looks pretty much like it was with the cage around it. There's like a massive gap missing from it. It looks pretty ghastly, but it's a leg, and I can stand on it, and I can run on it, and I can do stuff. I still get pain every single day. I get pain from standing, from walking, and from running. But I run every other day because I can't run every day because it would give me too much pain. So yeah, it still looks ghastly, but it is what it is. And I think I've moved on from that. I don't get too many people staring now. I used to get lots of people, or maybe I'm not as conscious of it as much. Maybe that's what it is. Let me play this video. It's just a bit of summing up, and it'd be a really nice thing to finish on. So let's see if I can get this going. Oh, hold on a minute. I need to do the volume as well. So let's try that again. Share screen, share sound. Then you get the full effect. And here we go.
Your voice, but still it's not enough, 'cause I need us. I swear it's the last time I'm going, 'cause I know we got that something. It lights up the dark at night, so you keep the engine running and I'll be the headlights.
Representing Great Britain, Steve Judge. Thank you, man. Go on! Go on, Great Britain! Kirsty! On Steve! Go on! Here's number 35. Here's Steve Judge.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Mate, that is so good. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
What are you doing to us?
Very inspiring. Hopefully that will set you up for the rest of the year. Set those goals and work towards them, and give me a shout if you need help along the way.
Just a bit. You've got my dopamine going, that's for sure. Flipping out. You know how to evoke some emotion with your audience, don't you, Steve?
I'm glad I'm doing something right. This is good.
You have. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. Where can everybody find you, Steve?
So I've got a website, www.steve-judge.co.uk, but otherwise social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. If you want me, you can find me. So don't leave me your excuses. Just say hi and let's have a chat.
Absolutely. And Serena, where can we find you as well?
Sorry, just unmute myself. I've got a website, so it's thepsychologyschool.co. And it's Serena Simmons or The Psychology School on Facebook, and Serena Psychol on Instagram.
Thank you so much, Serena, for sharing snippets of your story too, and it's so interesting to speak to both of you. Thank you. I wondered, because I've read, before we sign off, leaving on a kind of a more upbeat and positive note, although we all feel truly inspired, but I feel like slightly wobbly after that video. I want to read a snippet of an excerpt, if I may, a very short paragraph from your book, Steve, which really made me laugh out loud, and I'd like to share it with everybody.
Okay, and then afterwards, Fiona, don't forget the gift that I gave you, if you've got that available.
Yes, Steve also sent me this through the post, and he said I'm not allowed to open it until after his presentation, so I will open this when I sign off. Thank you, Steve. Very intrigued. So I just wanted to share this excerpt with you before you sign off, if I may. So this is a little story of Steve when he was in, the many times he was in hospital, and the many operations that he had to have. So he was asked by one of the nursing staff, "Change into this, please, Mr. Judge," the nurse said as she drew the curtains behind her. I stripped naked and put on the attire that I was supplied with, which consisted of a disposable gown and some sort of hairnet. I was collected by the stewards, who pushed my bed down to the required department, and I felt a little breezy under the gown, but I lay there with my hairnet on, uncomplaining. The operator came out to me with a clipboard to run through the standard questions of who I was, name, date of birth, hospital number, etc. And she then said, "Right, we need to just check which leg we're doing." And with that, she swiftly lifted up my gown to view which leg had been written on for confirmation. "Oh my goodness," she screamed, "you're naked." Her eyes squinted as she stared at me, and then said, "Mr. Judge, why have you got your pants on your head?" So this is, keep that sense of humour, Steve, because that is, that's a massive, massive attribute to you and your personality and the incredible human that you are.
True story. If you want to open your gift now, you can in front of everybody. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You've right. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to need the scissors.
It's only one.
Takes it down quite well. Okay, let's have a look.
So this is
a gift Oh, Steve, thank you. So here, I've got my Go-En coin. Thank you, Fiona, for the opportunity. For all the best on your gold.
So this is something that I like to give to people who have kind of given me the opportunity to excel at what I do, whether that's coaching or workshops or speaking. The Go-En coin is something that I wear around my neck all the time to remind myself to be aware of my vision and to seize opportunities. I can go into more detail, but basically there's some engravings on the coin. The rice represents Japanese rice fields, but it's also about you've got to plant your seeds before you can harvest. The fishing is very much about your network, similar to this group here. Make sure you're in the right network. Fish where the big fish are. And the final symbol is in the middle. It's a round circle, and that's a gear wheel. Represents the Industrial Revolution in Japan, but it also represents action. Take action. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve anything. So by wearing that, it reminds me every day. Hopefully, it will do the same for you, Fiona.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I will wear that with pride. That was a very sweet gesture. Thank you so much. And thank you to both of you again for joining us. Round of applause, I think, definitely for all of you. And thank you to everybody who's joined us tonight as well. The next one for RSViP will be same time next month. Obviously, February is a shorter month, so think that it's going to be the last Thursday of Feb. And the speakers will be announced in due course, so keep an eye out in your inbox for more details on that. But Matt, is there anything else you would like to say?
No, other than to just thank both our speakers for two fantastic talks. We've really enjoyed having you on, and thanks for your good humor and and sharing. Basically, we really do appreciate it, and good luck to you both.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great opportunity to be here as well. Thank you both. Thank you, Fiona.
Oh, pleasure. And have a great rest of the evening, everybody, and see you next month.